Recording. Cool. So I have the player. I'm going to add a box collider 2D, and the next thing I'm going to do is create a player movement script. To create that, double click this. Sometimes it will open in JetBrains, sometimes it won't. Cool. So here's all my code. I'm only going to do something pretty simple with this character. I'm going to create a... Okay, one thing I'm going to show you, right? So far along, when we've wanted to edit something in the inspector, what have we done with it? We've made it public. Can anyone think of an issue with that? This may or may not be a thing you're familiar with, but basically, if a variable is public in coding, it means other scripts can change it. So it basically means like let's say I had bullets that had a speed and I was slowing them down when they like hit into water or something like that. And like I just had a piece of code saying, alteration enter other.game object set speed to like -1 or something like that. What can happen there is by mistake, because my player's movement is also public, but nothing else ever needs to edit it, my player's speed now is being affected. Does that make sense? I've created a bug in my code. One way to avoid that is to make variables private. But a consequence of making it private is we can't edit it in the inspector. There is a way to make these editable in the inspector, and that is to write serialize field before it, and then if I type private, and I'm going to call this a float, and I'm going to call this player speed. And if I save this and jump back to Unity, okay, it's editable in the inspector. Does that make sense? So when I'm writing code for stuff that I want to be pretty robust, I tend to do this. Well, like, if it's confusing for you, you can just write it public. 9 times out of 10, it won't cause an issue. When it does cause an issue, you're scratching your head trying to figure out what's gone wrong, because something's changing that shouldn't be changing, basically, and something somewhere is affecting it. So just bear that in mind, that setting it to putting square brackets, serialized field in front of it, allows you to edit. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is, inside the update method, I'm going to go if input.getAccess. Actually, and we're going to get the horizontal axis. And we can say if this is greater than, let's say 0.1 f. Okay, what this does, the reason I'm saying they're greater than 0.1 f, okay, is because if you're using a thumbstick on a controller and you like slightly touch off it, it might be like 0.001 or something like that. So you might get like does anyone have controllers that have controller drift, or you've experienced that? So coding something like this kind of minimizes it a little. This will basically create a dead zone of like 0.1 of the movement of the Now, when we're playing on keyboard, we're only going to be going -1 and +1, so it doesn't matter. It's not really that effective. But it does mean you can plug in a controller and use it. So, can anyone think of an issue with this? So I said there we're going to be going left and right. Arrow keys are A and D are going to be -1 +1. Can anyone think of an issue there? You can, but then I think it won't move. Or you might get 0. I'm not sure not. You can actually do a print on that and see what happens. Anyone think of an issue with the code there? Yeah, so if this is like -1, so if I hit left, it's going to be -1, and that's not greater than 0. So we can use a math function here, and that is to say math f.abs, which stands for absolute, and we can surround this in that. Does anyone know what an absolute value is in maths? It gets rid of minus, yeah. Yeah, so it means whether or not this is positive or minus, it's just going to basically tell us the value. Okay, so it like knocks off the negative. Does that make sense? Cool. So now, whether we have -1 or +1, it's always going to cancel. I'm also curious. I'm just going to do a print line here to see, because I'm curious what does happen if we press both left and right at the same time. So I'm going to save that, and if I jump into Unity, oh no, what have I done here? Sorry, I've got an extra. So if you look at the console here, it's printing out 0. If I hit left, -1, right, 1. If I hit them both together, I think what's happening is it's just locking to whatever was the most recent value. Yeah, cool. So that's a good learning, that like if someone's pressing right and then they hit left, it's going to stay locked to right completely. And if they're pressing left and they're hitting right, it's going to stay locked to. So it'll prioritize the first input that was selected, which is interesting. I'm glad we did that. We all learned something new today. So what we're going to do here is now do our movement, and we can try this out and see how it works. We're going to do transform.translate, and then we're going to do vector3.right multiplied by input.getAxis horizontal and we're going to multiply that by our player speed. Okay, does that make sense? What we're going to do here is we're going to move our player forward every frame in the right direction. So a vector tree right is a vector that points to the right. We're going to multiply that by the axis. So if the axis is 1, if it's positive, it's going to go that way. If it's -1, it's going to go that way. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then we're going to multiply that by player speed. So that, like, this is going to move way too quick. I can predict it right this second. Way too quick. So we're going to change that. Okay. So our player speed will be able to set. Now, one thing is, I haven't set a default player speed here, so bear in mind you will get this effect where you'll be trying to move your character, it won't move if you don't have a default set. So I'm going to set this to 1 to see what it would be like without any player speed. And I'm pretty sure this is going to be way too quick. Yeah. That's probably too quick for our game. So, what was that rule from last week? We half, or double, so we'll half it. That's still too fast. I think we need to go like 0.1. So we need to go even more extreme. Now because this is in the... That's going to be pretty good. Yeah. Pretty happy with 0.1. Because this is in the update loop, what's going to be a consequence of the way I'm doing my movement? Well, it will definitely go to speed because we're not following it on the camera. Did anyone think of any issue there with what I thought that? Because it's in the update loop. How often does update run? Yeah, so now the movement is attached to the frame rate. So I run this on a really slow computer, the character's going to move slow faster. To make that no longer an issue, we're going to do something that now is going to make this feel really slow. And what we're going to do is multiply this by time dot delta time. Okay, this is the same as, well, it's not the same, but it's another way of solving this, where if you remember last week we put the physics in the fixed update. Time dot delta time. Okay. I don't want to ruin the art, but basically, if we think this is like a second, we might have 60 FPS happening. Okay, on this machine, within this second. On another machine, it might be doing 120. So if we zoom in on a single frame here, or well, 2 frames, I'm actually going to change the colors of these settings. I'm going to start off, that's our start frame. This is going to be the 120 FPS one. And this is the 60 FPS. Okay, it's going to take twice as long. Twice as long for the 60 FPS machine to render a frame as the 120 FPS. Does that make sense? So if we multiply our speed, time.delta time is the amount of time that has elapsed since the previous frame. If you look at this, this is going to be, let's say, 0.03 of a second, and this is 0.03 of a second. That's that. If we multiply this by 0.03 and this one will be 0.06 because it's a longer time frame, we're going to get the same movement. Does that make sense? Okay. Just bear in mind, if you're finding frame rate issues of like player movement, time.delta time is going to solve it normally. And you'll see this a lot if you're looking at Unity tutorials, generating someone doing movement or something like that. They'll be using time.delta time. So now if I press play, the speed is going to be horrifically bad, but I think I don't know if you can see it's moving there. So let's go for 5. It's probably still too slow, so we'll double it. We're pretty happy with that 10. Yeah, happy enough with that. Do we want to go a bit quicker? You know what? I'm maybe not convinced 5 is perfect. We're going to double it and see. That is too much. So then we'll go 15. Maybe meet in the middle. Okay. So we'll try like 15 as our movement speed. There's no like... I think I was saying in the lab, like game design is a Goldilocks. Sort of, you deal with a lot of Goldilocks problems. You're trying to get things just right. I don't know if 15 is just right. But it's good enough to test this out. So the next thing then is to do the vertical movement. We can basically just copy this code. And where it says horizontal, we can write vertical. What vector tree do you think I need? Up. Yeah, so up would be our positive direction. So we'll save that and we'll see how this works and if we've got WASD working. So we're able to move left and right, up and down. Cool. Okay, it's like, it's, to be honest, like it's pretty decent movement. We're able to move in diagonals, it feels fairly smooth. I don't hate it. I do think it's too quick though. I'm going to start back at 10. I'm not happy with that. So the next thing we can do is, if we want like the camera to follow our character, if that's all you want, you can make the camera a child of the character, and now when we press play, okay, the camera moves with the player. Now, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use Cinemachine. So I'm going to go Unity Registry, and I'm going to wait for Cinemachine to show up. Why do you think I'm using Cinemachine over like attaching the camera? It's a slight delay, it's smooth, it lets us move the camera on certain conditions. Yeah, it gives us a lot more control basically. And I think for a game like this, that like you're telling some sort of personal story or something about yourself, it's nice to have these little touches where it feels a bit nicer rather than just a camera that's locked directly to a character. It doesn't always feel great. So we're going to do this. I'll just check to see if Photoshop finished downloading. Oh no. Might have to edit these pictures in Paint. Is there a way to have a blank background in Paint? Can you just delete? No. Okay, well we'll live with it for now. Yeah, it'll be fine. We'll make our background white, it'll be good enough. And that's the key. So on the, what I'm going to do is go Hold on. Did Cinemachine import? No. Did it? Yeah. So I'm going to go game mode with Cinemachine and I'm going to create a 2D camera. And I'm going to set the player as the follow target. Okay, cool. So we can check and see here. We can start moving our player around and see how this is going to work. So this is where we get the nice, the player does kind of move a little bit off center of camera. Okay. So if we expand out the body of this camera, okay, we have here an ability to change the way this is going to work. So we can increase a dead zone here in the middle that our camera won't move at all. So I'm going to like expand this out to 0.3 and 0.3 maybe. And now if I press play, my character is going to be able to move around inside in this area without the camera moving. And as soon as I reach the edge of that, then the camera is going to follow them. Okay, it allows us to do stuff like that basically. Okay, so we can change this by changing the body settings in the frame transposer. It allows us kind of change how the object is tracked. If we wanted our character at the bottom of the screen, we can do something like this. Yeah. We can change the camera distance. We can change like the dead zone depth, all this sort of stuff. There's a soft zone as well and a hard dead zone basically. We could bias different axes, all that sort of stuff. But look, pretty happy with this. I'm going to set this back to 0. And we're going to have our camera following the player. And I'm going to set the camera background to white because it's going to cover up the fact that, well, it's not really properly going to cover it up. The fact that we just took pictures off the whiteboard. Well, this is going to look awful. So, if I place this here, so we're going to try and make some animations out of this. So I'm going to make this here. Cool. The dirtiness of the whiteboard will not help us, and the fact Photoshop won't download will also not help us. But I'm going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to save this as a PNG. And I'm going to save it directly into my GitHub folder, whatever it is. And I've called this project today Assets. I'm going to create a new folder here. And I'm going to call this Art because that's what we're creating. And we can call this Sprite1. You know what? I'm actually going to try something a bit different with this actually. If I do. So I'm just going to see if we can like actually make the sprite animation out of these two in Unity. So I'm just going to save that again as Sprite1. I'm going to jump back into Unity. It might import it, it might not, but here is my sprite. You're probably familiar with this. I'm going to set this to multiple pixels per unit. I don't know what size this is going to be. I have not made this the way one would make a sprite if they really wanted to. Which? Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna see how it goes basically. So there's different. I'm gonna just do a can I do this custom? Maybe I can just do this custom by dragging. So I can drag out a square here. I'm gonna that's Sprite1 0. These are gonna be different sizes. This is gonna be awful, but it'll be fantastic because of it. And this is Sprite2. Cool. I'm gonna hit apply. Now if I select the two of these sprites, and drag them underneath the player. It's got to create a new animation. Oh no, it attached it to the player. Oh dear. Go. Now, this sprite, obviously, this is exactly the issue we want to avoid, and that's why we're able to scale this without worrying too much about how it works. We want it like approximately the size of this, and I'm not going to be too worried about being exact. And I'm going to set the position. And I'm going to make this a child of the player. I'm going to turn this off. And now if we press play on our game, hopefully our animation will run. It's a tad fast, yeah. So if we open up the animation window, actually this might have changed, so this might not work that well for me, but we'll see. So this is the animation window, right? And it's showing us here, if we press, hold on, I need the sprite selected. So, what if we set this, if I drag this all the way over to here, just this keyframe, we can see now, that'll be like every 10th of a second it's going to change. Okay, almost there. And I just need to copy this. Okay, and let's see how this works. Are we pretty happy with that? Like with our animation? So we have like now some of our game in. The next thing I'm going to grab is a background, and I was thinking this whole area here is probably the best background. This is going to be interesting to how we like delete out parts of this image. It's going to take a lot of skill. An awful lot of skill to do what I'm doing. And then I'm gonna cut this. And so this is going to be our level. So we're gonna maybe follow the cat's tail around for some reason. And I gotta hit File, Save As. So here's our map. The other thing I'm going to do is change the camera background color to like something like that. So then the next thing I do is just make sure each time we play this we're going full screen. So you might think of a little game where it's something like this. Into the cool S. And then you make the cat happy. So that's where we just started, like how we'd start creating a game, like bringing in some simple assets, not worrying too much, like kind of putting them together. The animation there works like reasonably well. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a bit by changing the orthographic size because I think we're a bit too zoomed out. So the next thing we can do is go game object, 3D object, and I'm going to create some text. Okay, text with TextMesh Pro. Why do you think I'm using TextMesh Pro here? Like, what's useful about it? You can create text other ways. It's what basically the benefit of TextMesh Pro is, like, it's a much better rendering system for our text. It renders it much more accurately to the world. So we'll have to hit import TMP essentially. In Unity before, there used to be like different text and UI text systems. So basically we can do this. I'm probably going to want to scale this down quite a bit. And we can change the text here, and we can say, is this a dream, or am I on a cat's tail? Gonna change the text size now a little. Okay, so we can start creating text like this. We probably want to do, like, we might want to change the font. I know we did this week 1, but we might want to, like, I'm just going to do it now. So if we go, the font, I'm going to search cat to see if there's any cat fonts. Because that seems to be our theme. Oh. This, I think, is a perfect cat font for me. So we can extract this zip file. All we do is drag this file into Unity. Oh, remember. Maybe there's different types of fonts, so this type font might not work with Unity. There we go, sorry. So this is our font here. That's all fine. So, folks, the next thing we're going to do is look at just using this text. And we can, I think the easiest way to do this is if I right click on it. I think I can create a TextMesh Pro font asset. And that's here, and now I can drag that onto that text. Cool. So there we're able to kind of customize our font, make it nice. So 2 more things we're going to do real quick. One of them is we're going to go Window and Package Manager, and I'm going to bring in the post-processing stack. Or post-processing, it's just called now. I'm going to hit install. Post-processing, are people familiar with post-processing? Have you seen them games before? You know what it is? It'll do stuff like focus and blur and vignettes, and you can do color grading and kind of bring a scene together. Yeah, and that's basically the idea behind it. So, things I'm not going to show today, folks, are things like, you know, like the end screen or start screen. I think we've gone through that a few weeks in a row. Cool. So to use post-processing, we select the camera. I'm going to add a component here, and the first is a post-processing layer. And the layer here I'm going to set to transparent FX. And I need to make sure I set the camera layer to the same layer. Okay, that means it's going to render the post-processing. Cool, that should be fine. And then I'm going to add a post-processing volume. I'm going to check it's global, which means it affects the whole world equally. So it's not, if it's local, it's the kind of thing you might walk into a foggy area and it changes the camera or something like that. I'm going to click new here beside profile. And I can click add effect, Unity, and let's say I want to add in some vignette. I think for a 2D game vignette, especially this type game, can work quite well. I'm just going to hit all these tick boxes so that you can see what they do. Tick boxes. And let's say this intensity here, if I drag that up a little, okay, that's what a vignette is. Now, smoothness I can increase quite a bit. So that I can, so something like that, that maybe starts to look a bit better. So I'm not going to show every effect here. There's things like color grading we can do. Which lets us do stuff like, we can kind of tint the image a little, like make it a little bit warmer like that. Okay, bring out some of the colors. We can also, there's tone mapping, so there's one he's called ACES, which is like filmic tone mapping, which kind of like puts a film filter over the camera. Okay, there's tons of stuff here. Other stuff I think always normally looks good is stuff like bloom. So we can increase bloom amount. Okay, so bloom is going to make like bright things glow a little, basically. And the last effect I'll add on is grain. Add a little film grain to this. Okay. And now if we press play, hopefully you can see like with a little bit of post-processing, we get to have like quite a different look to our game. It starts to make it feel like a lot more polished, basically. A lot different. Now, obviously, our character sprite is kind of letting us down a little bit. That's all on me, though. That the cat is still cool. This text here, I'm going to add a really quick script to this that is going to just write out the text for us, okay? And I'm going to call this typewriter. I don't really know how to spell typewriter, so that's going to have to do it. Good. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new function here. And this is going to be an IE numerator. And I'm going to call this type text. Okay, that seems to be okay. I thought it might. So then what I'm going to do here is create I'm going to do this as a serialized field again. Private. I'm going to say my text. Sorry, this should be string my text. And in this IE numerator, I'm going to type in for each. Oh, sorry. This is char, which means a character in a string. So for each char in my text, it is going to type out the text a little bit. Where is it? And so then I want I need to create this as a private string. text to type. I'm going to do this as a serialized field. Okay, and what this is going to do, it's going to type out the text every frame. So we are going to go, and actually, sorry, I need to get a, I'm going to do the same. This is going to be a private text mesh pro. And you'll see it adds in using TMP Pro. My text field. And what we can do here is we will say my text equals, sorry, plus equals sorry, what did I write? Sorry, that's what should be there. Char C plus equals C. Okay, and what this means is it's going to kind of pause, wait, and then last thing actually I need to add in here is serialized field, private float, type time. And what I can do here is, this is typing yield, yield return new, and what this does is wait for seconds, and I can type in their type time. Okay, what this code does, we're going to call this at the start, and what it's going to start doing is it's going to loop through and say for each line of text in, oh sorry, that should be in, I need to change that to text to type. But for each character there, it's going to add that to what the text is and then we'll update it. Okay? So that's the type. So to start this, we type start coroutine. And this is one of the weird things about coroutine. We call it with quotation marks, like we call it like it's a string. So type text. And then in the update, one thing I'm going to do here is just update the UI text, which is my text.text. Oh, sorry. Sorry, my text field. Dot text equals my text. So we'll need to hook all that up in the inspector, but hopefully it works. So if we go to the inspector now, we have the text here. What do I attach that script to? Typewriter, cool. So text to type is, I'm going to delete this out of here. I'm going to set the type time to 1 second so we can see it. And my text field, I'm just going to drag a reference to itself. So hopefully this should type out the text. I've wired everything up right. So, as you can see, 1 second is way too long for this to type out. So maybe like 0.05 or something like that. We want this actually to type out pretty quickly, and that'll give us a typewriter. Okay? And that works. Like, okay, type it out. Okay. Using all the tools we've learned so far, I think you can put together a game like this pretty successfully. The real challenge this week is to try and think of something you think is interesting that you want to tell a personal story. Is that okay? Are there any questions on the assignment? I'll put stuff up on Brightspace and specifically what I expect. But basically, make one of these flat games that is relevant to your development as a game designer, okay? So think about a moment, something about, it might be one moment, it might be multiple moments that like made you love games or want to create games or whatever. Okay? Any questions? Well done. You can see how quickly you can put together one of these games as well, which is handy. And folks, this is the last 10% assignment.